The history books sold you a lie. They told you that on a warm night in February 1940, Hattie McDaniel won. They splashed headlines across the country declaring that Hollywood had finally defeated its own prejudice. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, desperate to polish its own image in a changing world, printed her smiling face on every poster, using her as a symbol of their so-called progress. They wanted you to believe that the golden statue in her hand was a key that unlocked the door to equality. But no one told you what happened 5 minutes after that photo was taken. No one told you about the silence that followed the applause, or the long, lonely walk back to a table that had been deliberately hidden in the shadows. Her own people called her a traitor. The white establishment called her a maid. Critics labeled her an Uncle Tom, accusing her of selling her dignity for the white man's applause. They said she was content to play the slave, to bow and scrape for a paycheck, to perpetuate stereotypes that hurt her community. They said she was weak. They said she was a sellout. They were wrong. God, were they wrong. Hattie McDaniel was not a victim. She was not a fool, and she was certainly no traitor. She was a Trojan horse. On that night, February 29th, 1940, she didn't walk into that hall as a servant. She entered like a general, slipping behind enemy lines, ready to open the gates from the inside. She knew that you cannot change a system if you are standing outside of it, screaming at the walls. You have to get inside the room. Today, we are going to tell you what really happened at the back table, through the eyes of a witness that history forgot. We are going to strip away the glamour of the Golden Age to reveal the steel backbone of a woman who stood alone against an empire. And by the end of this story, we will owe Hattie McDaniel the apology she waited a lifetime to hear. Because she made a choice that night. She decided she would rather play a maid for $700 a week than be a maid for $7 a week. This was Hattie's revenge, and it was a dish served with patience, dignity, and a silence that roared louder than any scream. Let's go back to 1940. Los Angeles, the city of angels. But those angel wings were clipped if you had the wrong skin color. The city was covered in a glittering facade, a mirage of palm trees and sunshine. But the heart of that lie beat right here, the Coconut Grove nightclub inside the Ambassador Hotel. This was the epicenter of the dream. This was where the gods and goddesses of the silver screen came to drink champagne and congratulate themselves on their own magnificence. Inside, the royalty of the Golden Age held court. Clark Gable with his roguish smile, Vivien Leigh with her porcelain beauty, the powerful producer David O. Selznick. Champagne flowed like water, and laughter echoed off the crystal chandeliers. The air smelled of expensive perfume, cigar smoke, and exclusivity. It was a paradise built for the few. But there were also the invisible ones, the ones who made the magic happen but were never allowed to touch it. People like Arthur. Arthur was just 19 years old, a busboy from the cornfields of Nebraska with $5 in his pocket and stars in his eyes. He had come to Hollywood with the same dream as everyone else, but he had ended up in a white jacket, clearing tables at the Ambassador. His job was simple: be invisible, fill the glasses, clear the plates, wipe the crumbs, and never, ever look the gods in the eye. Arthur was trembling with excitement that night. He was going to see Rhett Butler in the flesh. He was going to breathe the same air as the people he saw on the cinema screens back home. But the first lesson Arthur learned that evening would shatter his illusions of Hollywood forever. The head maitre d' pulled Arthur aside, his face tight with a nervous energy, and shoved a small handwritten note into his hand. His voice was a hushed hiss, as if you were discussing a crime. "You handled that table, Arthur," the boss snapped, pointing toward the far end of the room. "The other waiters, they don't want to go near it. They think it's beneath them. And remember, kid, don't talk to them. Just serve and vanish. Do you understand?" Arthur was confused. What table could be so terrible that seasoned waiters refused it? Was it by the bathrooms? Was it a table of rowdy drunks? No, it was worse. It was the small, dark table squeezed right up against the kitchen wall. It was so far removed from the action that it might as well have been in another building. The Ambassador Hotel had a strict no blacks policy. Even in 1940, in the middle of liberal Hollywood, segregation was the law of the land. A black person could enter the coconut grove to clean the floor, to cook the food, or to serve the drinks, but they could never, ever sit down and be served. It was an unwritten rule written in iron. But that night, there was a problem. A massive problem. David O. Selznick had begged the hotel to make an exception for one of the stars of the film. The hotel management agreed, but only after weeks of negotiation, and only on one humiliating condition. Hattie McDaniel would not sit with the cast. She would not sit with Clark Gable. She would not sit with the producer. She would be granted entry, but she would know her place. That table, the one Arthur was assigned to, stood there like a monument to shame. Isolated, hidden, a deliberate insult designed to remind her that no matter how famous she became, she was still not one of them. But what the hotel management didn't know was that a war had almost started days before. Clark Gable was not just a hero on the screen. He was a man who detested bullies. When he heard that Hattie might be barred from the ceremony entirely, the king of Hollywood went to war. He didn't send a memo. He didn't have his agent call. He walked into the producer's office and laid it on the line. If Hattie can't get in, Gable told the studio heads, his voice dropping to that dangerous low register that made audiences swoon, then I'm not going either. You can give that award to whoever the hell you want. I won't be there. It was MGM's worst nightmare. The biggest star boycotting the biggest night of the year? The scandal would be ruinous. The suits panicked, agents scrambled, but Gable stood his ground. He respected Hattie, not just as an actress, but as a friend who had endured the same grueling harms on set, a woman who had laughed off the insults that made grown men crumble, a woman who had been a mother figure to the cast when the pressure became too much. But it wasn't the studio that stopped Gable. It was Hattie. She called him. Her voice was calm, maternal, yet forged from steel. She didn't want a scene. She didn't want a white knight to save her. She wanted to fight her own battle, in her own way. "Clark," she said, "you have to go. Go for me. I'll be there. Even if they bring me in through the back door, even if I sit in the pantry, I will be there. Because if I don't walk into that room, no girl who looks like me will ever walk in after me." It wasn't about pride. It was strategy. She knew the humiliation that awaited her. She knew the cost. But she also knew the value of being seen. Silence was not an option. Absence was not a protest. It was erasure. She chose to be present, to force them to look at her. And so, the night arrived. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the hidden history of Hollywood and want to support our mission to reveal the truth behind the rumors, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us dig deeper into these archives to bring you the stories that others want to forget. Now let's return to the Coconut Grove, where the door is about to open. At 8 p.m., Arthur stood by the kitchen swinging doors, adjusting his bow tie, his hands sweating. And then she entered, Hattie McDaniel. She was wearing a turquoise gown, silk draped over her shoulders, with fresh white gardenias in her hair, flowers her gardener had cut just hours before. She didn't look like a maid. She didn't look like the caricature she played on screen. She looked like a queen in exile. Arthur looked for fear in her eyes. He looked for anger. He expected to see a woman broken by the insult of the seating arrangement. He found neither. She looked at the young busboy, offered a small, tired smile, and whispered, "Good evening, son." She and her escort, her agent, William Meiklejohn, were led to the wall. The shame table. Look at the room in your mind's eye. Over there, at the Gone with the Wind table, Vivien Leigh and Clark Gable were clinking crystal glasses surrounded by admirers. Hattie sat yards away, listening to the clatter of dishes from the kitchen, watching her own movie's celebration from behind an invisible glass wall. She was in the room, but she was not of the room. Arthur's hands shook as he poured her water. He felt a deep, burning shame, not for himself, but for the people he worked for. He leaned in, breaking the strict rules of the hotel, and whispered, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry they put you here." Hattie looked at her glass, watching the bubbles rise, then looked up at the boy. That was the moment she delivered the line Arthur would take to his grave. She didn't speak with bitterness. She spoke with the wisdom of a woman who had walked a long, hard road. "Don't be sorry, son. I'm here. I'm inside. I opened the door. Now I just have to walk through it." And so the moment came. The lights dimmed, the chatter stopped. Faye Bainter walked to the podium to announce the winner for Best Supporting Actress. The room went silent. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Everyone knew this was the moment. Would the Academy actually do it? Would they give the highest honor in film to a Black woman? The Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Bainter's voice wavered slightly. Hattie McDaniel. The room froze. For a split second, there was no sound. A Black woman winning an Oscar? In 1940? It was like defying gravity. It was a glitch in the matrix of American society. And then, the applause started. It wasn't the raucous, screaming cheer of a modern ceremony. It was stunned. It was polite. But it was there. Hattie stood up. The distance from that kitchen table to the stage must have felt like miles. It was a walk through a desert of white faces, some smiling, some frowning, some simply staring in disbelief. Arthur watched her walk. She didn't rush. She didn't bow her head. Her steps were heavy, deliberate. Every step was a statement. Every step said, "You tried to hide me. You tried to put me in the corner, but now you have to look at me. You have to watch me take what I earned." She reached the microphone. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of millions of souls resting on her shoulders. She knew that every word she spoke would be analyzed, criticized, and remembered. "This is one of the happiest moments of my life," she said. And then she spoke the words that would echo through history, words that have been misunderstood for decades. "I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel." Short, precise, devastating. She wept. The audience applauded. It looked like a victory. It looked like the end of the movie where the hero wins and the credits roll. But the real tragedy didn't happen on stage. It happened when the cameras turned off. When the ceremony ended, the Gone with the Wind cast headed to a prestigious club for the after-party. Clark, Vivian, the producers, they all piled into limousines to go celebrate their massive sweep. They were going to toast the night away, all except one. Hattie McDaniel was not allowed in. She had the gold statue. She had the history. She was an Academy Award winner. But she was still just Hattie to the owners of that club. She was still Black. The doors remained shut. She went home. That night, the woman who made the world laugh, the woman who had just broken the biggest glass ceiling in Hollywood, sat in her living room, alone, with her award. She celebrated the greatest victory of her life in silence, while her co-stars drank champagne in a room she couldn't enter. Arthur, leaving his shift hours later, saw a single gardenia petal on the floor by the back table where she had sat. It was crushed into the carpet, just like Hollywood's conscience. But Hattie's war wasn't over. The enemy wasn't just outside, it was inside. After the win, instead of being hailed as a hero, the NAACP turned on her. They demanded she stop taking maid roles. They argued that by playing these characters, she was setting the race back. They threatened boycotts. They called her names that hurt more than any slur from a white man, because they came from her own family. And Hollywood listened, but they didn't listen in the way Hattie hoped. They didn't give Black actors better roles, they just stopped hiring them altogether. If having a Black character caused political trouble, the studios decided it was easier to just have no Black characters at all. Hattie was erased, cast aside by the whites who no longer needed her for comedy, and disowned by her own people who saw her as a symbol of the past. She died penniless. Her final wish, was simple. She didn't ask for a statue. She didn't ask for a parade. She asked to be buried in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, among the stars she loved, among the peers she had worked with. Her request was denied. "We don't accept coloreds," the cemetery management said. The body of the first Black Oscar winner wasn't even deemed good enough for Hollywood's dirt. She was buried elsewhere, far from the industry she gave her life to. But history plays the long game. History has a way of correcting the scales, even if it takes a lifetime. Years passed. The world changed. Through the door Hattie cracked open that night, Sidney Poitier walked through, then Denzel Washington, then Halle Berry, then Viola Davis. They walked on a path paved by Hattie's endurance. When Monique won her Oscar in 2010 for her role in Precious, she looked at the sky, dressed in a gown that paid tribute to Hattie, and said, "I want to thank Hattie McDaniel for enduring all that she didn't have to, so that I would not have to." She was right. Hattie didn't play a maid. She refused to play the victim. She subverted the system from within. She gave humanity to characters that were written as caricatures. She stole scenes from the biggest movie stars in the world simply by raising an eyebrow. Today, there is a monument for her at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. The place that rejected her body now uses her name to sell tickets to tourists. They build a memorial to apologize for their sins. And that lost Oscar? The plaque that vanished from Howard University during the civil rights riots of the 60s? In 2023, the Academy finally replaced it, holding a ceremony to honor the woman they had once forced to sit by the kitchen. If Arthur were alive today, looking back at that night with the wisdom of age, he would probably say this: "The woman I saw at that table wasn't looking for approval. She was planting a seed. We only saw the dirt, but she saw the tree." Hattie McDaniel was the first true revolutionary of cinema. And revolutionaries are never understood in their own time. They are mocked, they are hated, and they are isolated. Those who judged her are forgotten dust. Their names are footnotes. But Hattie, she's still smiling from that screen. And that smile, that knowing, confident smile, is the greatest revenge of all. She proved that dignity isn't something they give you. It's something you keep, even when they try to take everything else away. She was right. She was the credit to her race. She was the credit to the human race. And finally, after 80 years, we can say it. Hattie, you won. Do you think Hattie compromised her dignity, or was she a strategic genius who paved the way for everyone who followed? Was she right to take the role, or should she have boycotted the system entirely? We want to hear your thoughts. Pay your respects in the comments below. These stories must not be forgotten. We will not let them be forgotten. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the Rumor Report. We are dedicated to unearthing the truth of the past, one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and remember, never stop searching for the truth.